Chapter 1. Blaine. The silver ring sits in my palm, and my entire world stops. It is cold, smaller than I remember. The engraving on the inside band catches the red and blue flash of police lights, and for one suspended second, I cannot breathe. I cannot think. I cannot do anything except stand in the snow on the shoulder of Route 93 with freezing water soaking through my dress shoes and a rescue worker saying something to me that I cannot hear because the blood rushing through my ears has drowned out every sound on earth except the memory of Robin's voice the last time I heard it. 3 hours ago, he said goodnight. 3 hours ago, I told him I had a meeting in the morning and not to wait up. 3 hours ago, I was a man who had never once considered what the world would feel like without Robin Keene standing somewhere inside it. The rescue worker is still talking. Young guy, maybe 25, wearing a reflective vest over a heavy jacket, his breath coming out in white clouds that dissolve into the January air. He has a clipboard. He is asking me questions. I watch his mouth move and I understand that he wants my name, my relationship to the vehicle owner, whether I have any information that could assist in the search, and every professional, controlled part of me that has run a billion-dollar company for 11 years wants to cooperate, wants to answer calmly, wants to be useful in the way that Blaine Harrow is always useful. Instead, I walk past him toward the river. Sir, his hand lands on my arm. Sir, you cannot go down there. The bank is unstable and our dive team is already... I remove his hand. Not roughly, just firmly, the way I move every obstacle that positions itself between me and what I need. What is your name? I ask, and my voice comes out so quiet and so even that the young man actually flinches. Officer Daniels, Officer Daniels, the person who was in that vehicle is not in the river. I say it like a fact. I say it because, if I say it like a fact, it has to be true. He would not have gone into the river. He hates the cold. He hates water. Find me the security footage from the highway cameras between mile markers 11 and 14, and find it in the next 20 minutes, or I will own this entire precinct's operating budget by morning. The threat lands. I see it register in his face, the slight widening of the eyes, the recalibration of how he is looking at me, from concerned bystander to something else, something requiring more careful handling. Good. I need him afraid. I need everyone here moving faster than they are moving, because every minute standing on this shoulder means another minute that Robin is somewhere in this cold without me knowing where. I turn back to the wreck, my car technically, a black sedan registered under Harrow Predictive Systems, because Robin never owned anything in his own name that could be traced back to me. That was my arrangement, my rule, my particular brand of careful that I dressed up as protection and handed to him like a gift, and he accepted it, because Robin accepted everything I gave him with that quiet, deliberate patience that I told myself was contentment and never once examined closely enough to know the difference. The car is destroyed. It left the road at speed, from what the officers told me, clipped the guardrail at the bend, where 93 curves north, and came to rest against the concrete barrier with the front end compressed inward and the driver's window shattered entirely. There is glass in the snow. There is a long, dark smear across the guardrail that the part of my brain still functioning in clinical mode identifies as paint, and the part of my brain that is not functioning in any mode at all identifies as evidence of impact, of force, of a body that was inside this machine when it left the road. They found his coat on the passenger seat, his wallet on the floor, contents intact, his phone, screen cracked but still powered, sitting on the dashboard like he set it down deliberately before something happened, and the ring. His ring, which has not left his right hand in 4 years, found wedged between the passenger seat and the center console as if it slipped from his finger during the impact, or as if... I stop that thought before it finishes. A detective approaches from my left, older, salt and pepper hair, the particular walk of someone who has delivered bad news enough times that he has developed a specific pace for it, measured, not rushed, the walk of someone giving you the last few seconds of hope before he takes it. Mr. Harrow, he extends his hand. I shake it automatically. I'm Detective Marsh. Boston PD. I understand you were notified as the vehicle's registered owner. Can you tell me your relationship to Robin Keene? And there it is. The question I have answered in exactly one way for 5 years. The question I have a practiced response for, a clean, professional response that protects both of us from the particular kind of exposure that I decided, early and unilaterally, was too dangerous to risk. My mouth opens. He works for me, I say. The words taste like ash. They taste like 5 years of carefully maintained distance, of separate entrances and deleted messages, and Robin walking 3 steps behind me at company events with that perfectly neutral expression he practiced until it fit him like a second skin. They taste like every time I told myself that keeping him secret was keeping him safe, and every time I believed it because believing it was easier than the alternative. Detective Marsh writes something on his notepad. And you drove out here personally at 11:30 at night because he works for me, I say again. And even I can hear how hollow it sounds, how completely insufficient, how the explanation that satisfied everyone for 5 years suddenly cannot hold its own weight against the image of that ring in my hand, and the black smear on the guardrail, and the river running dark and fast 30 feet below us. Marsh studies me for a moment. He is good at his job. I can tell because he does not push, just lets the silence sit between us like an open question, and I am aware, distantly, that I am not performing this correctly, that the controlled CEO who arrived at this scene 20 minutes ago has been slowly replaced by something rawer and less manageable with every passing second. Mr. Harrow, he says carefully, we have no confirmation of fatality. The absence of a body is actually, find him. My voice breaks on the second word, just slightly, just enough. I don't care what it costs. I don't care what resources you need. Find him, tonight. Marsh nods slowly, and I can see him recalibrating again, filing me away under a different category than he started with, and I turn away from him because I cannot stand being read right now, cannot stand the particular sympathy that is beginning to form in his expression, the kind reserved for people whose grief is larger than their explanation for it. I walk back to the guardrail and I look down at the river. The water is black and moving fast, and completely indifferent to the fact that I am standing above it, coming apart at every seam. Robin? I say his name out loud, just once, just quietly, just to feel it leave my mouth, because it occurs to me that I have been so careful, so relentlessly disciplined about when and where and how I am allowed to say his name that I cannot remember the last time I said it like this, without strategy, without calculation, without managing what the sound of it might reveal about me. The river does not answer. My hand closes around the ring, and then one of the rescue workers, a woman in a red jacket, appears at my elbow with an expression I recognize immediately because it is the expression of someone about to say something that will change the shape of everything, and she says, very gently, Mr. Harrow, our team completed the initial sweep of the riverbank. There is no... She pauses, steadies herself. There is blood on the passenger side door panel, a significant amount. Our forensics team is requesting... I stop hearing her at the word blood. The ring is so cold in my fist that I cannot feel my fingers anymore, and I realize, standing on the shoulder of Route 93, with snow falling soft and relentless into the black water below, that I have been holding it so tightly that the engraving has pressed itself into my palm, that Robin's ring has left its mark on my skin, the way Robin himself never quite allowed himself to, and I press my fist against my chest and I feel something crack open behind my ribs that I do not have a name for because I have never felt it before, have never had reason to, have spent 5 years making sure I would never have reason to, and failed. No, I whisper. My knees hit the snow. For the first time in my life, Blaine Harrow falls.
Chapter 2. Robin. The television is saying my name, and I am sitting on the floor of a rented house on the Maine coast, listening to it. Robin Keene, 25, analyst at Harrow Predictive Systems, presumed dead following a single-vehicle collision on Route 93 northbound. No body recovered. Investigation ongoing. A photograph appears on screen, my employee badge photo. the one where my silver hair is pulled back and my expression is carefully, professionally blank, and I watch myself stare out of a 32-inch screen and feel something so layered and so heavy that I cannot name it with a single word. I pull my knees to my chest and I cry. Not the quiet, composed kind of crying I have trained myself toward over the years, the kind that leaves no evidence, that can be blinked away before anyone notices. This is something uglier and more honest. This is the kind that comes from somewhere below the chest, that shakes the shoulders and closes the throat, that has no interest in being dignified or controlled. I am not dead, but watching my own life get reduced to a 40-second news segment, something in me feels like it is. Hi viewers. Have you ever had to choose between saving yourself and protecting the person you love most, knowing you could not do both at the same time? Leave your answer in the comments, because what Robin gave up to disappear is going to cost him far more than he ever planned for. The anchor moves on, and I press the power button, and the screen goes dark. The house becomes very quiet. Just the ocean 2 blocks away against the shore. Just the heat clicking through old vents. Just the soft breathing of Toby sleeping upstairs in the room that faces away from the road, because I checked both windows before I let him choose, and I told him the back room had the better view, and he believed me the way he believes most things I tell him, with a trust so complete it makes my chest ache. Toby is 8 years old. He has a bright green backpack with a cartoon dog keychain he picked out himself at a gas station in Connecticut, holding it up with both hands and asking if he could have it with the carefulness of a child who has learned not to assume the answer will be yes. He is the reason I staged a highway accident on a Thursday night and walked away from every single thing I had spent 5 years building. He is the reason that when Blaine looked at me across his desk 2 weeks ago, and I told him what I had found in those restricted files, and he said, "Stop accessing those files, Robin," I understood I was already out of options. Not "I will look into this," not "show me what you found," not "are you safe?" Stop accessing those files. I have replayed that moment so many times in 4 days that the memory feels less like a memory and more like a wound I keep opening to confirm it is still real. Blaine standing at his 14th floor window, still in his jacket at 9 in the evening, turning to look at me with an expression that made a calculation before it responded. He was not cruel about it. That is almost the worst part. He was measured and completely in control, and his first instinct when I brought him a crisis was to manage me rather than believe me. And after 5 years of being the person closest to him, I finally understood what that said about how close I actually was. I left. I called Wes from a payphone 2 blocks from the Harrow building. I did not go back. The knock comes at midnight. 3 raps, a pause, then 2 more. The pattern Wes and I agreed on. I checked the side window before I opened the door, and Wes Keats is standing on the porch in a heavy jacket with a laptop bag over one shoulder and a gas station paper bag in his other hand that I know from experience contains terrible coffee and the cheese crackers he eats when a situation is moving faster than he wants it to. He looks at my face when I open the door and steps inside, without saying anything about what he sees there. "The coverage is everywhere," he says. His name is trending on 4 platforms. Harrow shut down 3 contracts this afternoon and had to be physically removed from the river search zone by a state trooper. He pauses. He is not handling it, Robin. I look at the dark television. No, I say, he wouldn't. He pulls his laptop from the bag and opens it on the kitchen table, turning the screen toward me. Spreadsheets. Encrypted case files that Wes has spent 6 months building and that I spent 11 days adding to, with everything I pulled from Harrow's restricted servers. Names of families, altered school records, denied benefits, children removed from programs they earned, a pattern so deliberate that when it reaches a federal prosecutor's desk, it will be impossible to set aside. Toby's file is on the 3rd page, halfway down. Household flagged as high instability. Advanced program eligibility revoked. 8 years old, and a machine running on Gareth Harrow's logic had already decided what kind of future he deserved. The congressional investigator opens the case formally on Monday, Wes says. Once that happens, we have federal protection. Until then, we stay dark, and we do not contact anyone from your previous life. He looks at me steadily. Are you ready to testify? I think about Toby upstairs, sleeping with one arm around the stuffed bear he pretends he is too old for. I think about the 40-second news segment and my photograph, and the fact that somewhere in Boston right now, Blaine Harrow is either tearing the city apart looking for me, or sitting inside the wreckage of something he does not yet understand. And I think about how both of those possibilities feel equally devastating, which tells me everything about the state I am still in. No, I say quietly. Wes nods. He sets a coffee cup on the table in front of me, takes the crackers for himself, and outside the ocean keeps moving in the dark, and the house stays quiet, and I tell myself that I made the right choice, that there was no other choice. That the version of me who walked out of Blaine's office 2 weeks ago was the first version of me in 5 years who was finally thinking clearly. I almost believe it. Then my phone, the new prepaid one that only 3 people on Earth have the number for, vibrates once on the kitchen counter. One message. No contact name, no number I recognize. It reads, "I know where you are." I look up at Wes. He is already looking at me. He has already seen my face change. The coffee sits between us on the table, going cold.
Chapter 3. Blaine. I fire Marcus Holt at 7 in the morning, in the middle of his own sentence, because he uses the word closure, and I decide in that exact moment that I am done with him. He is the 3rd executive I have let go this week. The board has stopped calling my personal line and started routing everything through my assistant, which tells me they have already begun discussing what to do about me in rooms I am not in, which is fine, which is exactly fine, because I have not slept in 6 days, and I have not eaten anything that required a plate in longer than that, and the only place on earth that feels remotely tolerable right now is a 7th-floor apartment on Marlborough Street that I have no legitimate reason to be inside, and yet have not left in 4 days. Robin's apartment still smells like him. That is the thing nobody warned me about, the thing I was not prepared for, the way a space can hold a person after they are gone, the way the air in these 4 rooms has retained something I cannot name scientifically, but that hits me every single time I open the door with the force of something physical. Cedar and something lighter underneath it, something that is just Robin, just the specific and unrepeatable combination of things that made him who he was, and I stand in the doorway every morning for a full minute before I can make myself walk in, because once I cross the threshold, I have to accept all over again that the person who made this place feel like this is not coming back. The board wants me to issue a statement. They want me to attend the memorial, say the appropriate words, accept the appropriate condolences, and then return to the 14th floor and resume being Blaine Harrow, which is a thing I have done without interruption for 11 years and which currently feels as impossible as being asked to speak a language I have never learned. Hi viewers, have you ever lost someone and realized too late that you never once told them what they actually meant to you? Leave that in the comments, because what Blaine finds in this apartment tonight is going to make that question hit completely different. I find the coffee mug on the 2nd day. It is sitting on the left side of the dish rack, clean and upside down, the white one with the small chip on the handle that Robin refused to throw away because he said it still worked fine, and replacing things just because they were imperfect was wasteful. I stood in the kitchen holding that mug for 20 minutes. I know this because I checked my phone afterward, and 20 minutes had passed and I had no memory of them. I find the notebook on the 3rd day, on the nightstand beside the bed, a slim black thing with a pen still clipped to the cover. I do not open it. I sit on the edge of the bed with it in my hands and I look at his handwriting on the cover, just his initials in the bottom right corner, RK, small and neat, the way everything Robin did was small and neat and considered. And I think about the fact that I have shared physical space with this man for 5 years and I do not know what he wrote in his notebooks, and I never asked, and now I cannot ask. And the weight of every question I never thought to ask is settling onto my chest like something structural, like something that was always there, and I simply never noticed because Robin was there too, and his presence made the weight feel manageable. The scarf is the worst one. It is folded on the shelf in the closet, dark gray, the one he wore the winter I met him, before I moved him into this apartment, before any of this became what it became. He kept it even after I bought him better ones. He kept it folded on that shelf for 4 years, and I never once asked him why, and now the answer is somewhere I cannot reach. My phone rings. I look at the screen. Gareth. I let it ring. My uncle has called 7 times since the accident. He has left 4 voicemails that I have not listened to. He showed up at the Harrow building on Tuesday with a fruit basket and an expression of such practiced, careful concern that my assistant accepted the basket on my behalf and sent me a photograph of it, and I stared at that photograph for a long time before I deleted it without responding. Gareth has always been good at the performance of appropriate feeling. It is one of the things I respected about him for years, his ability to read a room and give it exactly what it needed. And it is only now, standing in Robin's closet holding Robin's old gray scarf, that I am beginning to understand that a man who is always performing the right emotion might simply be a man who has never once felt the real one. The phone stops ringing. I set the scarf back on the shelf exactly the way I found it. I walk back into the living room and I sit on Robin's couch, and I look at the wall across from me where there is a small framed print of the Boston skyline at night that I bought for this apartment 3 years ago because Robin mentioned once, in passing, that he liked city lights at night, and I hung it there myself on a Sunday afternoon while Robin stood behind me telling me it was slightly crooked. And I told him it was fine, and he took the level out of the utility drawer and proved that it was not fine, and we argued about it for 10 minutes in the particular way we argued about things, which was more like a conversation than an argument, which was the best 10 minutes of that entire Sunday, and I did not know that then the way I know it now. My phone buzzes. A text from my head of security. Not a call, a text, which means he does not want this conversation recorded. I open it. Mr. Harrow. The highway camera footage between mile markers 11 and 14 for the night of January 9th has been pulled from the city's traffic management server. All 3 cameras. The deletion was authorized from inside the Harrow building. I read it twice. Then I read it a 3rd time. I look up at the Boston skyline print on the wall, slightly level, exactly the way Robin insisted it should be, and something cold and very specific moves through me that is not grief anymore. Someone inside my own company erased the evidence of what happened to Robin that night, and they did it before I even thought to ask for it. Did it before I even thought to ask for it.
Chapter 4. Robin. Wes has the burner phone in a Ziploc bag on the kitchen table, and we have not slept, and the sun is coming up through the salt-crusted window over the sink, and neither one of us has said the thing we are both thinking, which is that someone found us in less than 4 days and we do not yet know how. It could be a bluff, Wes says, for the 2nd time, in the tone of a man who does not believe it. He is sitting across from me with his laptop open and a legal pad covered in handwriting that has gotten less neat as the night has gone on. Someone trying to flush you out, make you move, make you contact someone you should not. If they actually knew where we were, they would have done something by now. It has been 6 hours, I say. Exactly. Wes. 6 hours is not reassuring. He does not argue with that, because he cannot, because we both know that Gareth Harrow did not build what he built by moving slowly when speed was available to him. If his people sent that message, 6 hours of silence does not mean we are safe. It means they are deciding something, and the gap between a decision and its execution, when the people deciding have law enforcement contracts and government access, is not a gap you want to be standing in. I get up and check the front window for the 4th time since midnight. The street is empty, the ocean is turning gray-pink with the early light, and everything looks exactly as quiet and ordinary as it has no business looking. We keep working, I say, turning back from the window. We do not move unless we have to. Moving creates a trail, and right now the only advantage we have is that they are not certain enough to act yet. I sit back down and pull Wes's legal pad toward me, and look at the names written there. 43 families across 6 states. And I make myself focus on that instead of the phone in the Ziploc bag. Show me the Henderson case again. Wes turns the laptop toward me. The Henderson file is the one that keeps me awake more than any of the others. Daria Henderson, 31, single mother, Omega, receiving state housing assistance in Worcester. Flagged by Harrow's system as high risk for financial fraud, based on criteria that Wes spent 6 months reverse engineering, and what those criteria actually measure, stripped of all the technical language, is whether a person is poor, whether they are an Omega, and whether they have children. Daria Henderson lost her housing voucher, lost her apartment. Her daughter missed half a school year, and the system that did this to them is currently licensed to 11 state agencies and being considered for federal adoption. 43 families verified, Wes says, but the actual number is significantly higher. He pauses. Robin, when this case opens Monday, the investigator will need a lead witness. Someone who is inside Harrow, who accessed the restricted files, who can speak to what the system was designed to do versus what it claimed to do. Anne Breege. He looks at me directly. That is you. There is no version of this case that works without you. I know that. I have known it since the payphone call. I know it the same way I know that testifying means surfacing. And surfacing means Gareth finds out where I am with considerably more certainty than an anonymous text. And surfacing means Blaine finds out I am alive. And that particular consequence is one I have not been able to examine without my thinking going sideways. I still love him. That is the truth I have been living with for 4 days in this cold house. The truth I cannot reason my way out of, no matter how many times I replay his voice, saying stop accessing those files. Love and trust are not the same thing. I loved Blaine Harrow for 5 years and trusted him for almost as long. And then one night in his office I found out that his trust in me had a ceiling I never knew existed. And now I am sitting in a rented kitchen with 43 names on a legal pad, and love without trust is just a feeling with nowhere to go. Give me until Monday, I tell Wes. He nods. Upstairs, Toby's alarm goes off, and I hear his feet hit the floor, and the shuffle of a child not yet willing to fully commit to being awake. And something in me loosens slightly at the sound of him moving around up there, alive and ordinary. Then his feet stop at the top of the stairs. Robin! His voice is careful in the way it gets when he has found something he does not know how to ask about directly. Can you come up here? I go up the narrow staircase and into the small back bedroom where Toby is standing in his pajamas, not looking out the window but looking at the nightstand, where I left my bag open last night and where a photograph has slipped out from between the pages of my notebook. It is a photograph of Blaine, a candid, taken 3 years ago at a private dinner, kept because of the way he is laughing in it, the rare, unguarded version of his face that almost nobody ever saw. I have carried it folded inside every notebook I have owned since then. Toby picks it up carefully. I know him, he says. He came to my school for career day. He talked about computers. He looks up at me with his dark, serious eyes, and what he says next lands in the center of my chest, like something has been dropped there from a height. Why did Uncle Blaine let us die? The room is very quiet. The ocean outside is turning fully gold with the morning, and I have no answer for him, none at all, and the silence fills with everything I cannot say. Come downstairs, I say quietly. I will make you breakfast. Toby sets the photograph back on the nightstand. He does not push for an answer. He never does. And that restraint, in an 8-year-old who has every right to demand answers from the world, is the thing that finally makes my eyes sting. Downstairs, Wes reads my face the moment we walk in. Toby recognized Blaine from a photograph, I say. Career day. 3 years ago. At his school. Wes closes his laptop slowly and looks at me. And in the silence between us we arrive at the same place at exactly the same time. If Toby's connection to Blaine goes back 3 years, then whoever sent that message last night may already know it too. And that changes everything.
Chapter 5. Blaine. The authorization is on page 231 of a 400-page contract package, and my signature is at the bottom of it, and I have absolutely no memory of reading it. I am sitting on the floor of Robin's apartment with my back against the couch, and contract documents spread across every inch of available space around me, physical copies that my private investigator pulled from Harrow's legal archives 3 days ago, and that I have been working through page by page since 2 in the morning. And the one I am holding right now, page 231, is the Civil Rights Compliance Appendix to a government partnership agreement that I signed 4 years ago on a Tuesday afternoon between 2 other meetings, and buried inside the language of this appendix, under a subsection titled Behavioral Prediction Parameters, is the authorization that allowed Gareth to build everything he built under the cover of my name and my company and my signature. I read it 3 times. Then I set it down on the floor very carefully, the way you set something down when your hands are not entirely trustworthy, and I look at the ceiling of Robin's apartment, and I stay very still for a long time. My investigator, a compact, precise woman named Clara Reeves, who has worked for me for 6 years, and who I trust more than most people I have known for decades, is sitting at Robin's kitchen table with her own copy of the document and a yellow legal pad, and she is watching me with the particular patience of someone who has delivered bad news before and understands that the person receiving it sometimes needs a moment before they are ready to respond to it. Walk me through it again, I say, without moving from the floor. Clara sets down her pen. The appendix authorized a subsidiary data collection program under the Harrow Government Partnership umbrella. The language is technical enough that without a civil rights attorney reading it specifically, most people would process it as standard compliance language. She pauses. It was designed to look that way. The parameters that Gareth embedded in the behavioral prediction model, the ones that disproportionately flagged low-income omegas and children in public assistance households, those parameters trace directly back to the authorization in that appendix. Another pause, shorter. Your authorization, Mr. Harrow. I pick the document back up and look at my own signature again. Blaine A. Harrow, in the handwriting I have had since I was 19 years old, sitting at the bottom of a page that gave my uncle permission to build a system that has been quietly, methodically destroying families for 4 years, and I signed it without reading it, because I had another meeting, and because I trusted the people who put it in front of me, and because I was the kind of man who believed that the details were someone else's responsibility, as long as the broad direction was right. Not evil. I need to be honest with myself about that, sitting here on this floor surrounded by these documents, because the easier thing would be to find a way to make this about Gareth and only Gareth, to locate myself on the clean side of the line between deliberate cruelty and innocent ignorance. But the line is not that clean. Gareth built the weapon, but I handed him the materials without looking at what he was going to do with them, and the families who lost their homes and their benefits and their children's futures did not lose them any less, because the man who signed the authorization was careless rather than malicious. I put the document down again. How many families, I ask? Clara looks at her legal pad. Based on the data our investigator has been able to access independently, a minimum of 43 verified cases across 6 states. The actual number is likely significantly higher. She meets my eyes. The system is currently licensed to 11 state agencies. There is active consideration of federal adoption. Something moves through me that I do not try to name. I get up from the floor because I cannot have this conversation sitting on it, and I walk to the window and I look out at the street below, and I think about Robin coming to my office and telling me what he had found, and I think about what I said to him, and I think about the fact that he is gone now, that he drove off a highway in January and did not come back, and he knew before he died that I was the kind of man who told him to stop looking instead of starting to look myself. What about the footage? I say. Still gone, Clara says. But we traced the deletion request. It originated from a device registered to Gareth's private office in the Harrow building. He moved fast, within 18 hours of the accident. She hesitates, which Clara almost never does. Mr. Harrow, there is something else. I turn from the window. She picks up a separate folder from the table, thinner than the contract documents, and sets it open in front of her. While we were pulling records from the government partnership files, we found a cross-reference in the Harrow data archives to a private fertility clinic in Cambridge. Beacon Genetics. The reference was buried in a file flagged under Gareth's personal access credentials, not company business. She looks at me steadily. Our investigator subpoenaed the clinic records this morning through the Federal Inquiry Channel. The records came back an hour ago. I walk back to the table. I look at the folder she has open. The clinic records document a DNA sample submitted 4 years ago, Clara says carefully, under a name that matches Harrow family records. Specifically, your younger brother Daniel's medical file. She pauses. The sample was submitted in connection with a paternity determination. She meets my eyes and holds them. Mr. Harrow, the child listed in those records is 8 years old. His name is Tobias, and according to the DNA documentation in this file, he is your brother's biological son. The apartment is completely silent. I look at the folder. I look at my brother's name in the clinic records, Daniel, who disappeared 6 years ago in circumstances that were never fully explained and that Gareth handled on my behalf because I was 29 and grieving and in no condition to manage it myself. Gareth knew, I say. It is not a question. The file was accessed under his credentials 8 times in the last 3 years, Clara says quietly. He knew. I put both hands flat on Robin's kitchen table, and I look at the wall across from me, where Robin's Boston skyline print hangs, level and straight exactly the way he insisted it should be, and I understand in this moment that the accident, the missing footage, the algorithm, the child, all of it connects to one point, one person, one deliberate and sustained campaign of control that has been running directly underneath my hands for years without me seeing it. My phone rings. Unknown number. I pick it up. I look at the screen. Unknown number. No area code I recognize. I answer it. Silence for 1 second. Then a voice I do not know, low and careful. A man who sounds like he has been waiting a long time to make this call. Mr. Harrow, my name is not important. What is important is that the boy in those clinic records is alive, and so is the person taking care of him. And if you drive north on Route 1 out of Portsmouth and take the second left after the Bridgewater Marina, you will find a gray rental house with a blue mailbox and a broken porch light. A pause. You should go tonight, before someone else does. The line goes dead. Clara is watching me. Who was that? I am already standing, already reaching for my coat. Someone who knew Robin, I say, and knew enough to know I needed to find him first.
Chapter 6. Robin. Blaine's car is parked across the street and my body knows it before my mind does, because my coffee cup is on the floor and my hands are at my sides and I have not moved in 30 seconds, and the only thought currently running through me is that he found me. He actually found me. And every careful calculation I made over 11 days has just collapsed into a single point of failure, standing outside this house in a dark coat with his hands in his pockets. Wes? My voice comes out completely flat. Wes? Come here right now. He is beside me in 4 seconds, reads my face, reads the window, and goes still. We stand there together, looking at the black sedan across the street, and the man leaning against it who is staring at the front door of this house with an expression I can see even from here, even through a salt-crusted window in the gray morning light. And what I see on his face makes my chest do something painful and complicated, because Blaine Harrow does not look like the most powerful man in any room right now. He looks like a man who drove 4 hours through the night on a piece of information he was not even certain he could trust, because the alternative was standing still, and standing still was no longer something he was capable of. He pushes off the car and walks toward the door. Robin, Wes says. I know, I say. What do you want to do? I do not answer him because I do not have an answer. Because every version of this conversation I imagined over 11 days assumed I would have more time, assumed I would be ready, assumed that when this moment came, I would be standing on solid ground instead of a kitchen floor with coffee soaking into the linoleum and my heart going completely unreasonable things against my ribs. Blaine knocks twice. Hi viewers, what would you do if the person you sacrificed everything to disappear from showed up at your door and you could see on his face that he had not slept in 2 weeks? Tell me in the comments, because Robin is about to open that door, and nothing after this will ever be the same. I open it. The air between us does something immediate and physical, the way it always did. The way I told myself for 5 years was just biology, and told myself for 5 years was manageable, and told myself for 5 years did not mean what it meant. And Blaine looks at me, and every prepared thing he came here to say leaves his face completely. He goes absolutely still, not the controlled stillness he uses in boardrooms, something else entirely. The stillness of a person whose entire nervous system has just received information it does not know how to process, whose body has stopped everything non-essential to focus every available resource on the single fact currently standing in front of him. I am alive. I am standing in a doorway in Maine in an oversized sweatshirt with bare feet on a cold porch, and I am alive. And he is looking at me like I am something that should not be possible, like the rules he understood to govern the world have just been rewritten without his permission. And I watch it move through him in stages, the recognition first, then the relief so massive it looks almost like pain, then something underneath the relief that is not relief at all, something darker and more volatile, that he is visibly working to hold back. His jaw tightens. You staged it, he says. His voice is completely quiet and completely controlled. And both of those things are more frightening than shouting would be. You staged the whole thing, Blaine. You let me search that river. His voice drops lower. You let me hold your ring. You let me believe. He stops, presses his lips together, looks away from me for 1 second, just one, the way he looks away when something is too large to look at directly. And when he looks back, his eyes are doing something I have never seen them do in 5 years, and it takes me a moment to understand what I am seeing, because I have never seen Blaine Harrow come this close to losing his composure in front of another person. Do you have any idea what these 11 days have been? It is not a question. It is the most honest thing he has ever said to me. I know, I say, and my voice breaks on the second word. I know, and I am sorry, and I had no other choice, and I need you to hear that, Blaine. I need you to actually hear it before you had no other choice. He repeats it slowly, like he is testing the weight of it. You had no other choice except to let me think you were dead. Gareth threatened Toby, I say. His people were coming for me. And when I came to you, when I told you what I found, you told me to stop looking. You told me to stop accessing the files. You did not ask if I was safe. You did not ask what I had found. You managed me, Blaine, the way you manage everything that becomes inconvenient. And I understood in that moment that I was on my own. The words land. I watch them land. I watch something shift in his face that is not anger anymore. Something that goes quieter and more internal. And he looks at me for a long moment without speaking. And the silence between us holds everything we have never said in 5 years. Every conversation we did not have. Every time I walked 3 steps behind him in public and told myself it was enough. You are right, he says quietly. I was not expecting that. I know you are right, he says. I signed the authorization without reading it. I told you to stop instead of starting myself. I was careless with my power, and people got hurt because of it, and you were one of them. He exhales slowly. I am not here to argue with you, Robin. I am here because I found the clinic records, and I found out about Toby, and I needed to know you were both alive, and I needed you to know that I know what I did. The hall behind me goes quiet in a different way, and I turn, and Toby is standing at the bottom of the stairs in his pajamas with his cartoon dog backpack already on his shoulders, because Wes got him up, and he is looking at Blaine with those dark, serious eyes that miss absolutely nothing. Blaine sees him. Everything stops. He looks at Toby the way the compass needle finds north, sudden and certain and beyond argument, and without a word he lowers himself to one knee on the cold porch, and brings himself to the boy's eye level, and looks at him with an expression so open it does not look like Blaine at all, and exactly like Blaine all at once. Is it okay if I come in? He asks Toby. Not me. Toby. Toby studies him for a long moment, then looks at me. I nod once. You have to take your shoes off, Toby says. Robin's rule. Blaine looks up at me from his knee and says, so quietly I almost miss it. That sounds like him. And I have to look away because my chest cannot hold what it is currently being asked to hold. Wes steps forward the moment Blaine is inside. We need to talk about how you found us, and who else knows you came here, because if you were followed. Blaine reaches into his coat and pulls out his phone, and turns the screen toward us, and his expression has shifted into something urgent and controlled, and I look at the screen and my stomach drops. I was not careful enough, he says. I am sorry. I led them straight to you. Through the front window at the end of the road, 2 black SUVs roll into view and stop. Then 2 more appear from the other direction. Toby's hand finds mine and holds it with both of his, and Blaine steps in front of us and faces the window. And outside the 4 black SUVs sit with their engines running, and I understand with complete certainty that Gareth did not send that text message 4 days ago to frighten me. He sent it to make sure I stayed exactly where I was. And I stayed. Chapter 7. Robin. Blaine walks out the front door before any of us can stop him. That is the thing about a man who has spent his entire life being the most powerful person in every room. When the moment comes that requires that power to actually mean something, he does not hesitate. He puts his coat on, picks up his phone, and walks out into the cold Maine morning like he owns every inch of ground between him and whatever Gareth sent to this address. I watch from the window with Toby pressed against my side and Wes already at the kitchen table with both hands moving across his keyboard. And I understand in this moment that the thing that makes Blaine Harrow genuinely dangerous has never been his money or his title. It is the fact that he is completely unafraid of consequence when something he considers his is under threat. And whatever trust was broken between us, whatever distance I put between us, whatever still needs to be said, he walked out that door because Toby is in this house. Wes, I say, without moving from the window. Already uploading, Wes says. Congressional investigator, FBI Portland, and the Federal Data Ethics Task Force simultaneously. The moment any one of them receives the full package, Gareth's people outside have a federal obstruction problem. He pauses. I need 4 minutes. Outside, Blaine stands in the middle of the front path on his phone, completely still, and one of the SUV doors opens, and a man in a dark jacket steps out with his arms crossed. I can read the body language from here. Warning, not action, not yet. The only thing holding that line is whatever Blaine is saying into that phone. Toby's hands wrap around my arm and hold without squeezing, the way he holds things when he has decided that holding is the most useful thing available to him. And I keep my breathing steady for his sake, and I do not think about what happens if Wes does not finish in time. The man by the SUV takes 2 steps forward. Blaine does not move. Then the front door opens, and Blaine steps back inside, without turning his back to the vehicles. He looks at me, looks at Toby, and says, "Federal marshals are 12 minutes out. I called them from the car before I knocked on your door." A pause. I was not as unprepared as I looked. Something in my chest releases that I did not realize I was holding. "Done," Wes says. He turns the laptop toward us. 4 confirmation windows. 4 green indicators. Full case documentation received, encrypted transfer complete, timestamp recorded. Wes looks at Blaine. It is out. Blaine's phone rings immediately. He listens, says yes once, hangs up. "Gareth's people just became a federal problem," he says. "They know it." One by one, all 4 SUVs reverse and disappear from both ends of the street, and Toby exhales against my arm with his whole body like a small person releasing something very heavy. And the road outside is empty, and the ocean keeps moving 2 blocks away, and for the first time since that anonymous text 4 days ago, I take a full breath. 3 hours later, Gareth Harrow is in federal custody, arrested in his private office on the 16th floor of the Harrow building. I watch it on Wes's laptop. Gareth is calm when they cuff him. Completely calm. The way a man is calm when he has always believed he was too protected to be truly touched. And his face does not change even when the agent reads the charges, which include fraud, civil rights violations, witness intimidation, and deliberate concealment of a minor's inheritance rights. The calm never cracks. Somehow that is the most chilling thing about this entire day. The congressional hearing is the following Monday. I watch Blaine testify from a hotel room in Portland, where Wes has moved us for the federal proceedings. Laptop balanced on the edge of the bed with Toby asleep beside me. When the committee chair asks Blaine directly whether he authorized the behavioral prediction program that harmed 43 verified families across 6 states, Blaine leans forward and looks directly into the camera and says, without hesitation, without the legal framing his attorneys spent 3 days preparing, "I signed the authorization. I did not read it. The harm that followed happened under my name, and I take full responsibility for that." End quote. The room on screen goes silent. His entire company is watching. Every floor of the Harrow building has the feed running. Every employee, every board member, every person whose livelihood is tied to his name is watching him refuse to protect himself. And my throat closes, and Toby stirs beside me, and I put my hand on his back, and I watch Blaine on that screen, and feel something shift in me that I am not ready to name. The hearing ends. One message arrives from the Harrow board chair. 4 words. Effective immediately. Step down. Blaine does not respond. I close the laptop, pick up my coat, and walk out of the hotel into the January cold, because I need air, and I cannot be inside 4 walls with every feeling currently trying to occupy my chest at once. Wes finds me on a bench outside the entrance 20 minutes later and sits down without a word and hands me his coffee. He did not have to say it that way, I say. No, Wes says. He did not. He could have let his lawyers frame it, could have walked away with his reputation mostly intact. Wes says nothing. He does not need to. I wrap both hands around the coffee cup and look at the empty street, and somewhere across the city, Blaine Harrow is no longer a CEO, and I am sitting on a bench in the cold, not ready to go back inside, and not ready for any of what comes next. But for the first time in 11 days, I am no longer certain that walking away is the same thing as being free. Chapter 8. Robin. Blaine is standing outside my apartment door at 7 in the morning holding 2 cups of coffee, and he does not have to be here. That is the thing I keep coming back to. The thing that has quietly rearranged everything I thought I understood about this man over the last 4 months. He does not have to be here. There is no title pulling him through this door, no authority, no arrangement that requires his presence in my hallway at 7 in the morning, with coffee from the place 2 blocks away, that I mentioned once in passing 3 weeks ago. He is here because he wants to be here. And for a man who spent 11 years making every single movement of his life count towards something strategic, wanting something simply because he wants it is, I have come to understand, the most radical thing Blaine Harrow knows how to do. I step back and let him in without a word. He sets one cup on the kitchen counter for me, keeps the other, and looks around the apartment the way he has started doing every morning, not checking it, just taking it in, the way you look at a place you are still learning, and I watch him do it and feel the particular complicated warmth that has been building in my chest for 8 weeks without my full permission. Hi viewers, can someone who was careless with your love actually earn their way back, or is the damage always larger than the effort? Leave your honest answer in the comments, because what Robin decides in this chapter is going to stay with you long after this story ends. Toby is still asleep down the hall. He does not start school until 8, and he has inherited my particular relationship with mornings, which is to say he treats them as a personal inconvenience. And Blaine knows this now, the way he has learned all of Toby's specific rhythms over the last 4 months. Quietly, without making a production of it, through the simple accumulation of showing up enough times that the rhythms became familiar. How did the Henderson meeting go? He asks, leaning against the counter. I wrap both hands around my cup. Daria brought her daughter. Grace is back in her advanced reading program. Top of the class. I pause. She brought us a succulent, yellow pot. It is on the foundation windowsill now. Something moves through Blaine's face that is quiet and private, and he does not hide it from me, which is one of the specific ways he is different now from the man who told me to stop accessing those files 8 months ago. He used to manage his expressions the way he managed everything else, deliberately and strategically, and now sometimes he just lets them happen, and I am still getting used to being trusted with that. 31 of the 43 families have received formal remedies, I tell him. The remaining 12 are in process. Good, he says, and I believe him. That is the thing I could not have told you 4 months ago sitting on a bench outside a Portland hotel in the January cold. Trust is not a decision you make once. It is something you watch being built through consistent and unremarkable acts of showing up. And Blaine has been showing up every unremarkable morning for 8 weeks and asking nothing in return, and I have been watching and keeping count even when I told myself I was not. Gareth was convicted 6 weeks ago on all primary charges. 19 years. Blaine attended every minute of the sentencing and did not speak to the press afterward, which everyone who has ever known him understands is the most disciplined thing he has ever done in his life. The algorithm was banned federally. The affected families received a formal congressional apology that I helped draft. Blaine has not been CEO for 4 months and has not fought the board's decision and has not maneuvered for reinstatement, and he consults for the foundation now without compensation because I asked him if he wanted to be useful, and he said yes before I finished the sentence. Toby's door opens down the hall, and he appears in the kitchen doorway in his pajamas with his hair going in 4 directions, sees Blaine, and says, "You are here early," with the flat assessment of a child who has decided that early morning visitors are a fact of life he has chosen to accept. "I brought the good coffee," Blaine says. Toby considers this. "Okay," he says, and disappears back down the hall to get dressed. And Blaine looks at me over the rim of his cup, with something in his eyes that I feel in my chest, and have stopped pretending I do not feel. After Toby leaves for school, I walk Blaine to the door, the way I have started doing. Not because he needs walking out, but because the walk has become the part of the morning where we say the things that do not fit inside the ordinary frame of coffee and foundation updates. And today I stop at the door and look at him and say the thing I have been carrying for 3 weeks without knowing how to put it down. "I want to try," I say. "Not what we had before. I do not want what we had before. I want something that does not require me to walk 3 steps behind you or disappear when it gets complicated." I hold his eyes. "I want to be known, Blaine, not kept." He looks at me for a long moment, and something moves through his face that is too large for his expression to fully contain. "Come with me," he says quietly. "There is something I need to show you." He drives me to the Harrow building, which I have not entered since before the accident, and takes me to the 14th floor, and walks me to his old office, which has been cleared and repurposed as a conference room. And on the wall where his desk used to be, someone has hung the memorial portrait the company displayed during the weeks everyone believed I was dead. The black ribbon is still across the corner of the frame. Blaine stands beside me and looks at it. "I could not make myself take it down," he says quietly. "I kept thinking that taking it down meant accepting something I was not ready to accept." He pauses. "I think I am ready now." I reach up and remove the black ribbon from the frame myself, slowly, and I hold it in both hands, and I look at my own face in that photograph. Silver hair pulled back, expression professionally blank. The version of me that spent 5 years believing that invisible was the same thing as safe. Can I finally stop mourning you? Blaine asks. My eyes are doing something embarrassing, and I do not try to stop them. You can start knowing me instead, I say. He exhales like a man setting down something he has been carrying for a very long time. And outside the 14th floor windows, the Boston skyline sits in the late afternoon light, and I fold the black ribbon and put it in my coat pocket, because some things you carry forward, not as grief, but as proof of how far you have come. On the drive back, his phone rings. He glances at the screen and something shifts in his expression, something careful that I recognize immediately, because I spent 5 years learning every variation of his face. What is it? I say. He looks at me for a second before he answers. The Congressional Committee, he says. They want to reopen the scope of the investigation. A pause. They found a second algorithm. Different company. Same architecture. The car goes very quiet. Gareth had a partner, I say. Blaine does not answer, which is its own answer. And outside the window, Boston moves past in the fading afternoon light, and the black ribbon is in my pocket, and I look at Blaine's profile in the driver's seat, and I understand that we are not done yet, not even close. But I am still here, still choosing, and this time, I am not doing it in secret.
Chapter 9. Blaine. The Congressional Committee closed the second algorithm inquiry 9 days ago. It was not Gareth's partner. It was a junior developer who copied the source code before the federal ban and sold it to a private analytics firm in Delaware that had no idea what they were buying. The firm cooperated immediately once federal investigators arrived. No charges beyond the developer, no wider conspiracy, no new front opening up beneath our feet. I found out on a Tuesday morning, and I sat in my car outside Robin's building for 20 minutes before I went up, not because the news was bad, but because it was good. Because the thing that had been sitting between us since the drive back from the Harrow building was gone, and I realized sitting in that car that I had been using the unresolved threat as a reason to keep showing up every morning without having to say the thing I actually needed to say. The threat was gone now, which meant the only thing left was the saying. I have been standing outside Robin's apartment door for 3 minutes before I knock, not because I do not know what I want to say, but because I have spent 11 years building a life around never being this exposed, never handing anyone this much of myself, never saying the true thing when the managed version was available, and old habits do not die just because you have decided they should. I knock. Robin opens the door in his gray sweatshirt with his silver hair still not fully settled from sleep and his eyes already alert the way they always are in the morning, taking everything in before he has said a word, and he looks at me and then at the coffee and then back at me and steps aside to let me in without a word, which is the specific and particular grace of Robin Keene that I did not deserve for 5 years and am only now beginning to understand the full weight of. Toby appears from the hallway in his pajamas, sees me, says, "You brought the good coffee," with the flat assessment of a child who has decided my presence is a manageable fact of his mornings, takes a piece of toast from the counter, and disappears back down the hall to get dressed for school. I watch him go and feel something settle in my chest that I do not have a precise name for, the particular feeling of being accepted by someone who had every reason not to accept you, and chose to anyway, quietly, without ceremony, over the accumulation of ordinary mornings. Robin is watching me watch Toby. "Sit down," he says. I sit. He sits across from me. We drink our coffee in the specific silence that has developed between us over 11 mornings, the kind of silence that is not empty but full, that holds things without requiring them to be spoken yet. And I look at him across the kitchen table, and I think about the 11 years I spent being the most powerful person in every room I entered, and how completely useless all of that power turned out to be when it actually mattered. After Toby leaves for school, I put my coffee down, and I put both hands flat on the table, and I look at Robin directly, and I say it. I kept you hidden for 5 years. I told myself it was protection. I told myself the secrecy was keeping you safe, and keeping us safe, and I believed that because believing it was easier than the alternative, which was admitting that I was afraid. Not of exposure, of what it would mean to claim you publicly, of what it would say about how much you mattered to me, and how completely I would fall apart if something happened to you. I stop. I breathe. Something happened to you, and I fell apart anyway. And you were not even gone. I hold his eyes. I kept you hidden because I was a coward, Robin, not because I was careful, and I am not asking you to forgive that. I am just asking you to know that I know what it was. Robin does not respond immediately. He looks at me for a long moment with those gray eyes that have always seen more of me than I intended to show, and the silence between us is the most honest silence I have ever sat inside, and I do not try to fill it because filling silences is what I do when I am managing a situation, and I am not managing this one. I am just living inside it and waiting. Then he reaches into his coat pocket. He slides a single folded piece of paper across the table toward me without explanation. I look at it. I look at him. I open it. 3 sentences. Handwritten. Foundation letterhead. No hidden relationships. No decisions made for him. No corporate power over personal life. I read it once. I read it again, and I sit with it for a moment the way I should have sat with page 231 of that contract 4 years ago. Actually reading it, actually understanding what I am being asked to authorize, actually feeling the weight of what my signature is going to mean. This is not a contract. This is a person telling me exactly what it is going to cost to know him. Not keep him, know him. And the difference between those 2 words is the difference between everything I did for 5 years and everything I am being offered the chance to do differently. I pick up the pen from beside his notebook. I sign my name at the bottom without negotiating a single word. Robin looks at my signature on his handwritten page, and something moves through his face that he does not try to hide from me, and I am glad, genuinely glad, because Robin hiding things from me is what got us here in the first place, and I never want to be the reason he hides anything again. Toby wants to show you his science project this afternoon, he says, because Robin always approaches the large things sideways, always has. And I have learned to love that about him the way I have learned to love every specific and particular thing about him that I spent 5 years noticing without admitting I was noticing. I know, I say. He texted me. Something involving a volcano and a significant amount of baking soda. Robin almost smiles. Almost. He has been planning it for 2 weeks. I know that too. I look at him steadily across the table. I have been paying attention. I know I have not always. But I am paying attention now. He holds my eyes for a moment, and then he nods. Just once. Just slightly. And it is the most important nod I have ever received in my life. I reach across the table slowly and turn my hand palm up between us. Not grabbing. Not pulling. Just offering, the way I knelt on a porch in Maine and asked a child's permission before coming inside, because asking permission is something I am learning. Something I should have learned long before a staged highway accident and 11 days of silence taught it to me. Robin looks at my open hand, then he places his in it. His fingers are cool from the coffee cup, and I close my hand around his carefully, the way you hold something you have already lost once and are not willing to be careless with again. And I look at him across the table, and he looks back at me, and the morning light is coming through the window, and the succulent from Daria Henderson is on the windowsill, and there is a handwritten page with my signature on it between us, and I am leaning forward slightly, and he is leaning forward slightly, and the distance between us is the smallest it has been since he opened a door in Maine, and I found out that the world still had him in it. Robin, I say quietly. I know, he says, and he closes the distance.
Chapter 10. Robin. He is still holding my hand when the morning light shifts across the kitchen table, and neither of us has moved in a long time, and I do not want to move. Do not want to do anything that breaks what is currently happening in this kitchen, which is the quietest and most complete thing I have felt in 5 years. Blaine's forehead is resting against mine. His thumb is moving slowly across my knuckles the way it did right before I closed the distance between us, slow and deliberate and completely unhurried, and I can feel him breathing, can feel the specific rhythm of it evening out from something careful into something natural. And I think about the 11 days I spent in a cold house in Maine, convincing myself that this was something I could live without, and I almost want to laugh at the person I was 11 days ago, at how completely and confidently wrong he was. I have wanted to do that for 5 years. Blaine says quietly, without lifting his head from mine. You had 5 years to do it, I say. I know. A pause. I was an idiot. Yes, I say. You were. He pulls back just enough to look at me, and his expression is the unguarded version of his face, the one almost nobody ever sees, the one I have been carrying in a notebook photograph for 3 years, and it is directed at me completely and openly and without strategy, and I reach up and put my hand against his jaw, and feel him go still under my palm, the way he goes still when something matters more than he knows how to say. We are doing this differently, I tell him, from the beginning. No secrets, no 3 steps behind, no hidden apartments, no hidden anything, he says, ever again. I believe him, and the believing, after everything, is the most extraordinary thing. 3 months later, I am standing at a podium in the atrium of the Harrow Ethics Institute on a Thursday afternoon in April, with 200 people in front of me, and my speech on the lectern, and my hands completely steady, which surprises me every time I notice it, this steadiness that has been building in me since the morning I slid a handwritten page across a kitchen table and watched a man sign it without hesitation. The Institute is everything I wanted it to be, and nothing like anything I could have built alone. Floor-to-ceiling windows, natural light, the names of the 43 families engraved on a panel beside the entrance, not as victims, but as the reason this place exists. Daria Henderson's name is third from the top, and she is in the audience right now in the second row, with Grace beside her, and Grace is wearing a dress with yellow flowers and holding a small succulent in a yellow pot that she brought as a gift, and I had to look away when I saw it, or I would not have made it to the podium without embarrassing myself. Toby is in the front row in his good jacket with his cartoon dog keychain hanging from the zipper, because I told him this was a formal event, and he told me the keychain was formal enough, and I did not argue because he was right. Blaine is in the 4th row, not the front, not beside the board members, or the congressional representatives, or the federal investigators who are here in their official capacity. He is in the 4th row in the coat that is not his best one, with his hands folded in his lap, and his eyes on me, with an expression that I can read from the podium clearly enough to feel in my chest, which is not something I try to manage anymore. I look out at the room and I begin. Technology is not neutral, I say. It carries the values of the people who build it, and the priorities of the people who fund it, and the blind spots of the people who sign the authorizations without reading them. A pause. I know something about blind spots. I spent 5 years inside a system that required me to be invisible in order to be safe, and I told myself that invisible was enough, that existing quietly in the margins of someone else's life was a form of safety worth having. I look at the 43 names on the panel beside the entrance. It is not. And the families whose names are on that wall behind me know that better than anyone. They were made invisible by an algorithm that dressed up prejudice as mathematics. And the only difference between their invisibility and mine is that mine was chosen and theirs was not. The room is completely silent. This institute exists because invisible people decided to stop disappearing, I say. That is the only thing that changes anything. Not the technology, not the legislation, the courage to stop disappearing. When I step back from the podium, the room comes to its feet, and I stand there in the applause, and I look at Toby in the front row, who is clapping with his whole body, the way he does everything, completely and without self-consciousness. And I look at Daria Henderson in the second row, with Grace and the yellow pot succulent, and I look at Blaine in the 4th row. He is already standing. He is already moving toward the podium before the applause has finished, and I watch him come through the crowd with that particular walk of his, the one that parts rooms, and he does not stop until he is standing in front of me at the podium, with 200 people watching, and cameras from 3 news outlets recording, and his entire professional world present and accounted for. He takes my hand, not at the small of my back where nobody can see it, not 3 steps behind where it can be explained away. He takes my hand in front of every person in this room and holds it the way he signed that handwritten page, without hesitation, without negotiation, without asking anyone's permission or managing anyone's perception of what it means. Someone in the audience starts clapping again, then someone else. I look at him, and he looks at me, and he says, quietly enough that only I can hear it, I should have done this 5 years ago. Yes, I say. You should have. I am doing it now. I know, I say. I see you. And the thing about finally being seen, after 5 years of careful invisibility, is that it does not feel the way I expected it to feel. I expected relief. I expected vindication. I expected the particular satisfaction of something long withheld finally arriving. What I feel instead is simple, warm, ordinary in the best possible way. Like standing in sunlight after a very long winter and finding that the sun is exactly as warm as you remembered it being. Toby appears at my other side and takes my free hand with both of his, and looks up at Blaine and then up at me and says, with the complete and uncomplicated confidence of a child who has decided how things are, "Can we get food now?" I have been sitting in that chair for a very long time. Blaine laughs. A real one. The unguarded version that I kept folded in a notebook for 3 years, and that I do not need a photograph for anymore, because I hear it every morning in my kitchen over coffee and bad jokes about baking soda volcanoes. Yes, I tell Toby, we can get food now. We walk out of the institute together into the April afternoon, the three of us, into warm sunlight and the particular smell of a city coming back to life after winter. And I think about the last time I stood outside in the cold, with police lights turning the snow red and blue, and a silver ring in my pocket, and the absolute certainty that disappearing was the only move left. I reach into my jacket pocket and I take out the silver ring. Inside the institute lobby behind us, there is a small display case beside the memorial photograph, the one the company hung during the weeks everyone believed I was dead. And I walk back inside and I open the case, and I set the ring on the velvet beside the photograph carefully, the way you set something down when you are finished carrying it. It is not a symbol of death anymore. It is proof that the person everyone mourned was only ever one version of me. The version that believed living in secret was the price of being loved. The version that walked 3 steps behind and called it safety and meant it. That version is gone. Blaine is beside me. He looks at the ring in the case and then at me, and he does not say anything, because he does not need to, because we are past the point where the important things between us require words to land. I close the display case. We walk back out into the sunlight, where Toby is waiting on the steps with his cartoon dog keychain and his good jacket and his whole unbothered future ahead of him, and the city is warm and loud and completely indifferent to the fact that something just ended in there and something else just began, which is exactly how the best things happen. Love did not save him. The courage to stop disappearing did. If Robin's story moved you even a little, you already know that some loves are worth fighting for, and some silences cost more than we ever planned to pay. Robin did not need to be saved. He needed to stop shrinking himself for someone who was not ready to see him. And when Blaine finally chose to see him, really see him, openly and without strategy, that was when everything changed. If you made it to the end of this story, drop a comment and tell me one thing. Was it worth the wait? And if this story hit differently than you expected, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear that being chosen openly is not too much to ask for, because it never was. See you in the next story.